Good afternoon, and welcome to the Carolina Codecast, the official podcast of the Carolina Code Conference. I'm your host, Barry Jones, and with me today is Eric Weissmann. Say hello, Eric.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on the show. So we've got a lot to talk about with you today. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what you're doing, where you're from, what you like working on, and we'll go from there.
All that?
Yeah.
How much time do I have? You got the rest of the afternoon?
I'll steer you back on course if you
All right. No, thanks again for having me on. Eric Weissmann, Executive Director of NextGEN. We're a startup catalyst organization, entrepreneur support organization here in Greenville, South Carolina. Been here for a little over 2.5 years. Came by way of Cincinnati. That's where I grew up. That's where I lived my life, with the exception of a couple years I worked for the Walt Disney Company. So it was Disney Cruise Line marketing in Orlando. So we can talk about that. That was a fun chapter in my life. But I came here for this job, actually. Didn't really know much about Greenville, but the place that I was at previous to this, an organization called Cintrifuse, and I was on the founding team of that. Really got me into this entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And I was at Cintrifuse for about 8.5 years. So with the 2 years here for the better part of a decade now, I've been in this field of ecosystem building, and it's a blast. The stuff that we get to do and the folks that we get to work with and really the impact that we're going to have on this region and our section of the state and our section of the country is enlightening and it's very fulfilling. So, but yeah, I've been here for a couple of years and loving every minute of it.
Nice. All right. So I'm definitely going to want to circle back to the cruise stuff because I just got back from a cruise.
Oh yeah.
So that's fresh on my mind. But so there was a lot there. So let's start with ecosystem building. When you say ecosystem building, elaborate on what that means.
Yeah, it's kind of a nerdy term, right? You think ecosystem, everybody sort of shuts their brain off. But when you think of an ecosystem in nature, it's an interdependent system. Right. Now in nature, a rainforest is a good ecosystem, but rainforests aren't. Even they're not just all tall trees, right? There are rocks and shrubs and little mice and things that live and die amongst the soil that then gets regenerated into plants and vegetables and things like that grow. Same thing with an economic development ecosystem. And when we're talking about entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs, that needs to be part of the strategy of a state, region, county, city, et cetera. And the way that I look at it is economic development, really 2.0, the next wave of encouraging companies to move or to stay in your area of the country. Those are typically done by, it'd be better if there were no incentives, if people just moved of their own volition to move into a city or a region. But oftentimes there are incentives that are poured down from the top of this is the type of companies that we want to see in this area of et cetera, et cetera. Right. And a lot of times those incentives deal with capital and jobs. So they're wanting to see a big factory, a big call center, a big facility, and a lot of people working there, right?
Yep.
No problem with that. Everybody agrees that that's a noble strategy. But the way I look at it is kind of like Super Bowl squares. You know, you get $100, you put $10 on each square. You don't put them all in the same column, right? You don't put all your bets and hope that the score is 0-0. And I hope you have to diversify. And you have to kind of manage around. So one of those squares needs to be on fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's what entrepreneurial ecosystem building is all about. It's about the interconnected nature of universities, of co-working spaces, of accelerators, of funds, of funding sources, access to capital. Okay. It's about being inclusive. having a diverse set of businesses. And I do mean that in all the ways, not just racial and gender, but also types of businesses. Lifestyle businesses are a part of an entrepreneurial ecosystem, just as much as venture-backed startups are part of an entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I really kind of came about this back when I started at Cintrifuse, but I'm a marketing guy by trade. That's what I went to school for. That's what a lot of my early career was, in marketing roles or creative services roles. And when I found out about the Cintrifuse job, I originally was not interested. Like, this is, I'm much more conservative than that. I'm not a startup guy. I'm not even an economic development guy. Like, what help me figure this out? Right. But through that process, what really appealed to me, and there's some sameness, right? A marketer is a storyteller. When you're trying to do economic development, you're telling the story of what's happening here and trying to entice people to think that that's a good thing too. But what I really was drawn to was the impact, the lasting impact that we and our efforts were going to have on the community. Okay. And then I can specifically go through some of the things that we did in Cincinnati, but it turned out to be just a really great tapestry of my overall career to lead to this role. It was the first role. I wore all the hats at Cintrifuse at one point.
So you are a startup guy.
Correct. Yeah. So that's right. So as a matter of fact, that is one component of being scrappy, being resourceful, not waiting for something to get done, but take that initiative, and also to be iterative, not to feel like the first time is the only time and the last time, and we've got to get it right. Like, no, we're going to figure this out. We're going to iterate as we go along.
Right.
But that was the great thing for me, was that really have my skill sets lended as director of marketing. That was my first role. And there was 7 people at the time at Cintrifuse. So I'm, one of the first team members there, and go to the origin story, but it was a McKinsey group. The McKinsey group had done a study on our entrepreneurial ecosystem, or innovation ecosystem, I think they called it. And, that's like paying somebody $400,000 to tell you your baby is ugly, which we already knew. But that's what you do, right? That's what McKinsey specializes in. So from that framework, Cintrifuse was formed. So when I got there were no toys on the table, right? The sandbox was empty. We had to create, we're going to have member services. What are we going to do for the members? There was a bunch of things that the McKinsey group had figured out, and we were set out to fix those. Okay.
Well, let's steer a little bit for a second. Talk a little bit about the ugly baby. I'm a little bit curious about what what they saw that wasn't working, that needed to be fixed. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it boils down to really 3 areas or 3 chunks of that. The first one was, for a city of our size, there wasn't enough venture capital coming in.
Okay.
Cincinnati, about 2.5 million people in the MSA, a tank's worth of gas away from 50% of the population. So you can get, of the United States, in a day, you can hit 50% of the population. 8 Fortune 500 companies headquartered there, 4 universities, 2 R1 universities. So these were
Skyline Chili and some Montgomery and Rhodes,
which should get its own investment in and of itself. But for all those things, like, we should be a little bit higher in terms of how many venture dollars are coming in. So what's up with that? We got to fix that. The second thing was, you look at your innovation ecosystem here, and it's not that there's nothing there. And I would say the same thing for Greenville. It's not that we don't have anything. In Cincinnati, there was an accelerator here, an incubator over there. Those universities were over here, and it was like everybody was playing their own notes, but it wasn't making a song, right? You needed a conductor of the orchestra or a lifeguard in the pool. And then the third thing was there was no hub. There was no hive of activity, no central place where if I'm from out of town, this is the place I go to get plugged in and to see what's happening in town. I'm talking about a physical space.
Right.
And if I'm in town, this is the one place I want to go that people from out of town are coming to. So that's the long and the short of that assessment. And Cintrifuse again was formed to tackle all those. So we created a fund of funds. A fund of funds. That wasn't me stuttering. That's what the name of the thing is.
So what's a syndicate fund?
What's that?
So what is a fund of funds?
It's so we didn't make investments directly in startups. They have since changed their strategy, and now they are making investments direct in startups. But it was integral for those first two funds, which is $114 million in assets under management. I think that's right, $257 million funds.
Wow.
They would invest in other funds who would then invest in startups. It was really a good way to diversify, kind of like a mutual fund strategy. Like if you and I only have $5 million, or let's say we have $50 million, why not play with more money?
Sure.
We have $50 million, and we're going to invest that into startups. We can make probably 10 good bets, 10 $5 million bets, meaning good, meaning you're going to get a significant money return back. Right. So if I invest $20,000, okay, even if I double my money, that's just $20,000. But on those millions of dollars, so the scope was lower. I can make 10 investments. Whereas if you invest in 10 funds, each one of those funds invests in 18 to 20 startups. Each one of them is enticed and encouraged to come back to Cincinnati to do business with, or just to have an audience with some of these large global corporations.
Yep. That's
that catalytic effect. So the fund of funds, I think it was probably, I used to know these numbers, but it's less than 30 funds that we invested in. And then for each one of those funds that we invested in, there were at least 5 that came to town, right? That you got this big pot of money here, this honeypot sitting next to you. We had a line of suitors that went out the door and around the neighbor that wanted to date our daughter, right? They wanted to see what was happening in town because we had this big pot of money.
You were getting a lot of attention.
Right. Right. So that was great. And I think now I see why they've pivoted their strategy to say, hey, the fund of funds model worked. It got the attention of the big co's. It got everybody right off the ground. But now let's make some direct investments. So that's what a fund of funds is.
Okay. All right. So what else did y'all do up there?
So then the second thing was, well, I'll end with the second thing. I'll skip to the third thing, which was that hub, a building. So there is a neighborhood in Cincinnati called Over the Rhine. It was a not so good neighborhood. It's just inside of downtown proper. And the city wanted to catalyze that and have some, fan the flames of economic development and get people moving back in and get people shopping and eating. And so we created Union Hall is the name of it. Okay. It's a set of 3 old buildings built in 1855, 38,000 square feet of space that could have been a set of townhomes, right? It could have been just some condos. And that would have maybe you would have bought 6 condos. That would have been what it turned out to be. But when you have townhomes, when you have that type of capital development, those people leave at 7 o'clock in the morning and they come back at 7 at night.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of integration within the community. So from a Union Hall standpoint, which I ran for 6.5 years, we were bringing hundreds of people in a day that were drinking coffee down the street, or meeting their friends for happy hour, walking their dogs up there, living in apartments and walking. Like it was that level of vibrancy. And we held events. Startup Cincy Week was one of our signature events, but we also had a lot of the corporations that wanted to host their events there, and it really did did really stoke those fires to bring people back downtown. But the second thing is so I went over that. The first thing was get more money, outside capital in. The second thing was we need some coordination on this thing that we're calling an ecosystem.
Okay.
And that's what we rallied around a hashtag called Startup Cincy. And it was just social media shorthand, back in 2014, 2013, of a way that people would tag themselves in conversations and just, using the Startup Cincy as intended on a social media framework. But I felt that would be a good rallying cry, that we could get everybody to understand and to feel that we're all part of the same team. So whether you were you wanted to be a startup founder or you were a startup founder, you were a part of Startup Cincy. If you wanted to work for a startup or were working for a startup, you were a part of Startup Cincy. If you invest in startup or wanted to invest, you're all a part. If you're just a fan clapping for the parade on the side of the street as it goes, you want your town to be relevant and in this modern conversation, you were a part of Startup Cincy.
That was a big tent.
What's that?
It's a big tent.
Yeah. Exactly. And it also eliminates some of those territorial boundaries that we need. The days of command and control are over, right? There's top-down stuff doesn't work for ecosystem development. You can't have somebody come and wagging their finger and saying, we all need to teach this way, and we all need to do it this way. Like you need to stay in your swim lane and be the best pre-accelerator that you can be the best university program that you can be. But can we all kind of agree to talk every now and then and share things that we feel are an issue that somebody at City Hall or at the State House or at the university president level needs to hear? And I've since carried that forward. You'll hear me say a couple times that I don't have the playbook. I have a playbook, and some of the things that we experimented with and didn't work. There are some things that I'm duplicating. There's some things that I've never got to pull off, and I wanted to try. But central into all of that is the collaboration of what some would say disparate parts and pieces that I see as all part of the same ecosystem. So that gets back to that definition, that science nerdy sounding definition of what's an ecosystem. But you really have to be cognizant of where those baton passings take place in between organizations. But you also need somebody in that lifeguard chair that can say, there's a shark in the water, nobody sees this, and I think everybody's got to get out, or there's an issue in this specific area that no one is addressing. We need to be that we need somebody in that role as well, and that's what we did at Cintrifuse, and that's the same thing that we're doing here at NextGEN.
Okay, so what would can you talk about like what those type of what would the shark be?
An issue?
Like what would an issue be where you might
a big issue? Well, a big issue is that South Carolina is 8th out of 9 southeastern states in terms of venture capital activity.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds about right.
Yeah, it was my first month here when I heard the phrase "Thank God for Mississippi." What was that? Like, yeah, were it not for Mississippi, we'd be on the bottom. Like, man, that's not a strategy.
Yep.
So
not a strategy.
So that's an issue.
I've heard that expression before.
So that's an issue that if we're not careful and we're not paying attention to that, we got to get our head out of the sand. Yeah. I've committed to my board, to city council, to county council, anybody that will that has anything to do with our success. I don't want to be just a happy years guy.
Right.
I don't want to be the guy that just tells you, look over here, look how great this is, and look at this. I also want to be the guy that says, look, I just got back from the coal mine and I got 3 dead canaries. Is no one telling you this? Is no one telling you we have an issue here that we've got to address? So if we're not succeeding, why not? Let's fix it. Not to disparage or to to be all negative or pessimistic. It's a matter of saying, hey, this is an issue. Okay, now let's fix it.
Yeah.
So
can't fix the problem until you acknowledge it.
Yeah. So 8 out of 9 southeastern states. So this past year, and we're going to do it again this upcoming September. Next Venture Summit is our signature event, and we added an investor match day to that. Nice. So this was in the afternoon. We brought about, 30 investors and 40 startups together in just like a speed dating format. They each had 18 minutes of a conversation.
Yeah.
We did 186 pairings in that one afternoon. And now we're watching the results. Let's listen and talk to those startups to say, who did you talk to? How's that conversation going? What sort of questions are they asking you? How can we get you more prepared? And to the investors, the funders that are coming, we want to know, why didn't my kid make the soccer team? Right? What do we need to work on? Not that you need to, he doesn't need to be the starting defender or the striker, but what do we need to work on? Is it penalty kicks? Is it throw-ins? Is it dribbling? Is it defense? What do we need to improve? And that's what I'm committed to do. So
there's a lot to kind of follow along with on here. I guess first and foremost, when we talk about 8 out of 9, do you see any common causes or any reasons that have led to that? Was it just a lack of effort in the part of
the number of things? There's a number of things, and then, so I want to put two stakes in the ground and make sure that we kind of hit both of them.
Okay.
One is Silicon Valley, like literally that area of the world. Let's not put it in the country; it is its own thing, and we're very fortunate that is here in our country. But let's talk about Silicon Valley. I'll come back to that. But the second thing is to really think about our neighborhood, our regional neighborhood, the Southeast, in terms of tiers. So the number one state in the Southeast in terms of venture capital activity is?
Georgia.
Nope.
Florida.
Yes, Florida. And they're on a different level. They are in a different tier, tough to catch, but good for them. The pandemic helped. The tax atmosphere helped. Miami helped. All of that sort of stuff helped. So they're on a different tier. Tier 2 is North Carolina and Georgia. Okay. They're in that second tier. Tennessee is in close in that tier, but I would lump them together. Okay. And by the way, just to pause when we talk about that, that just what I said creates a donut hole with South Carolina in the middle.
Yep.
So what's up with that? Why are we? What's happening from that regional standpoint? And then comes the next tier, and we're in that tier with Kentucky, with Alabama, Arkansas, and then you got Mississippi, and they've got, everybody's got their own issues, right? And so some of that is endemic, it's over time, and some of that is that it's just not been an emphasis. And I think that's the case in South Carolina. It's just not been an emphasis. That there just needs to be some awareness, and not to steal any thunder or talk about future topics here already, but that's what we're setting out to do. And there are a lot of people throughout the state that are waking up to this. You look at the South Carolina Department of Commerce that recently changed its tagline from launch to legacy. That's great, right? To get that acknowledgement that we need to foster some of these. We can't just woo them to come in once you get big. Let's help you get big. Let's help you get there. So I think we want your headquarters here, not just your manufacturing arms. Right. and we want you to have the next thing here. So if somebody that's on your assembly line or in the supply chain has an idea and she wants to create her own business one day, can she visualize the infrastructure? Can she literally see it? So you go to startupgreenville.com, you look at the resource map. There's a map of all 66 different nodes around this ecosystem that should give you the confidence to say, I didn't know that I could get this type of help here. I didn't know that. Wow, the Greenville. So one of my, phrases that I like to use, and when I was investigating this job and doing my research, and there's no shortage of information about Greenville, South Carolina out there. And even since then, we're on an embarrassing amount of lists. Best southern towns with a waterfall, best Christmas parade, all these great, fantastic lists. And we the danger is that we become a Thursday through Sunday town. I want to be a Sunday through Sunday town.
Right.
I want somebody that comes in here and goes down Falls Park and goes down downtown and sees Falls Park and they imagine that they see a sign, a billboard or a neon sign in a street window that says hashtag Startup Greenville, and you look that up, you search for that, and like, there's a startup ecosystem here, huh? I didn't realize that. And then you start to unpeel that onion back, like, wow, there really is a lot going on here. And then you start to realize it's in the water. Like, it's been part of the DNA of Greenville to be entrepreneurial, to pivot, to say, you know what, we're not going to be a textile town anymore. What do you mean? We're the textile capital? Yeah, jobs, the investment, all this stuff is going overseas. What we're going to do is we're going to pivot to advanced manufacturing. And while we're doing that, we're going to eliminate a lane of traffic downtown and plant trees. And the trees are going to be pretty. Just trust me. In 30 years from now, your kids are going to love it. And boom. Yeah. So there's that spirit of entrepreneurship that pervades this. But I forgot where we were going with that.
Oh, we were going.
Oh, 8 out of 9.
Yeah. And so, when we talk about the startup investment and the launch to legacy, I really like that. Because it doesn't just assume that they're starting here; it assumes they're staying here.
Correct.
And I personally know of one tech company that went through the Iron Yards incubator.
Okay, great.
Started in Fort Mill, and then they got recruited away to go operate in Pittsburgh, and now their headquarters is in Pittsburgh, and they've grown to like 80 employees. I think one of the more famous ones around here is Proterra. Yeah, starting up, and they still do all their manufacturing here, but they moved their headquarters out to I think it was California, out to Silicon Valley. And so once they get going, how do you keep them?
Yeah. So to me, to us, it looks like a funnel, and that funnel needs to be just like any sort of sales strategy. You need to have more things going on at the top of the funnel than at the bottom of the funnel. So there are different strategies and different people in the ecosystem, different roles in the ecosystem that feed different levels of that funnel. And the first thing is that there's no wrong front doors to the ecosystem. However you got here, you're in the ecosystem. Congratulations, you made it. So at the top of the funnel are what we call searchers. It goes searcher, starter, mover, grower. So the searchers are the entrepreneurs. The searchers are the ones that are just getting started. It may be the proverbial back of a napkin at this point, but it's just somebody that is they've got an idea and are looking for some encouragement, looking for a tribe to belong to, because it can be very lonely. Even all the way down the funnel, it's very lonely. It can feel like you're an imposter the entire time that you're being a successful business person. But that searcher strata is addressed by a handful of folks here in the ecosystem already. So checkbox, got that one solved. But let's skip down to those growers, the ones that you're talking about, the ones that may have matriculated all the way through the funnel. They may just be here and be successful. So if we're not talking to them, if we haven't drawn a fence around them and say, please don't leave, how are things going? How is it? Are you finding talent? What's the access to capital like for you? If we're not integrated between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, then we're just going to have kinks. We're going to have bottlenecks, or we're going to have, it's really not a funnel. They're two isolated instances. We have to see that that this is a system. It's an ecosystem. They are connected. But I wanted to address that those companies that have made it through, they may not be right for our programming. They may not come to Founders Forum. They may not go through our accelerator program, or even want to have a mentor. But they're here, and we still need to talk to them, and we still need to listen to them. Those are the ones that we pony up to and say, how's it really going? What are you hearing? The people that come to you, or maybe it's a matter of, on the good news side of it, it can't be better. This is such a great environment, and I want to tell everybody about this. So if you have anybody, send them my way, because I'm having success here, and that's the type of recycled founder and recycled investor and recycled talent that is critical to the health of any ecosystem.
Nice. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to go back on your background a little bit.
Sure.
So where did you end up going to school for marketing?
So I graduated from Ohio State with a degree in marketing. Graduated is the imperative word there, because not everybody graduates from Ohio State, right? There's a lot of people that go there, but the graduation was the important part. But to me, marketing was the lesser of all the business evils. I didn't want to get into accounting. I didn't like finance type of stuff, but I was drawn to marketing, and I wanted to work for the Walt Disney Company. That was a dream. Maybe 9 years old, and found out that there are people that work there. It's not just all birds and fairies and things like that. Like, these are real people that make this dream come true.
I can understand that. It's an impressive company.
Yeah. So through some perseverance, I ended up with going through the Disney College program. They didn't come to Ohio State. I had to drive down to the University of Cincinnati, and had listened to a couple friends that attended the similar, like a semester earlier, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And
I've never heard of the Disney College program. What is that?
Yeah, they still have it. It's still a pretty cool program. Basically, you get a job at one of the Disney. And these are intern jobs, but they're could be in parking, could be in food service, could be custodial. I was in attractions, so I was a Jungle Cruise skipper and adventure in the Magic Kingdom. Yeah.
No, I love that. Right. All right.
It's a real job.
Give me your favorite joke from the cruise.
My favorite joke was when you get to the end and you've got some time before the boat unloads, and you're in this Jungle Cruise, right? So it's all these plants and foliage and trees and things. So you're like, in the time that I have left, I'm going to point out some of my favorite plants and tell you all I know about them. Any questions? That's good. I haven't probably done that in 50 years. No, but nice. that was my favorite joke.
For those of you listening to the audio version, that was silently pointing at different areas.
Right.
That's pretty good. I love all the cheesy jokes on that ride. That ride is dad heaven with all the bed.
So you get a job.
Yeah.
And part of your salary goes to a dorm. So you're living with other college program folks, as well as international students at Epcot, which is this World Showcase and Future World. At the time, those were the two big things at Epcot. But and then one of the days you attend a class. And you have a class project, and there's Disney leaders that come in and talk to you about that. So I had made some contacts and stayed in touch with them, stayed in touch with my roommates, stayed in touch with other people that I had come into contact with, and went back to Cincinnati, graduated from Ohio State, and then lived in Cincinnati for a couple of years, and then just decided, my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife and the mother of my 2 children, that let's just move down there. Let's just go down there and let's follow that dream. And the way I like to say it is the dog caught the car. I did it, and ended up with Disney Cruise Line marketing right when they were starting off establishing the brand of this, land and sea vacation. And now, it was just, it's just a fantastic, time in my life, and, really emblematic of following your dreams, and being persistent, and being nonlinear, right? It wasn't like I just rang the doorbell once and woohoo,
Right.
I got the job. Like, man, you gotta knock on a lot of doors. You gotta
Find a way in.
get good at having those conversations. But yeah, then moved back to Cincinnati. Was with Fifth Third Bank, headquartered in Cincinnati. It's a goofy sounding name, but headquartered in Cincinnati. They have, 11 or maybe 12 different affiliate banks, but they're headquartered in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is also one of the affiliates. So I was responsible for retail marketing for the Cincinnati affiliate. And then left there, went to a vendor of mine that was just a production company that was much more creative and much more responsive than any of the other agencies I was supposed to be working with. And so I took advantage of an opportunity and led creative services for them. And that was a real awakening for me to realize that, here I was leading 2 giant corporations. Right. That had no problem. I never had any problem anybody returning my emails or returning my calls. And now I'm Eric Weissmann with DSC Creative, and nobody was, if you wanted the villagers to eat, you had to go out and find the beast, hunt it down, cut it up, skin it, cook it, bring it back. We weren't going to there was nothing to do if you weren't bringing it in. So that was my first taste of real small business. And then from there, I went to work for a serial entrepreneur, and did creative services for it was an IT staffing and application development firm. It was basically the presentation layer on to the software that they were selling. Okay. I was there for a couple of years, and that's when, and again, this guy was a crazy successful entrepreneur, 17 different businesses. Wow. Yeah, it was nuts. But that taught me the startup world of, an idea a minute. Like let's make $10,000 bets instead of $100,000 bet. So all of these traits and all of this experience leads me up to this opportunity at Cintrifuse, where I was originally skeptical. And then when you start to peel the onion back and take a look at, not peel the onion back, when you start to back up and see, like, wow, this is a really, I do have a lot of this skill sets. I'm used to being a one-man army. Yeah. I'm usually the adult in the room that doesn't get distracted by the tin foil in the tree. That, because I'm used to these, that big co mentality was burned into my DNA of horizon viewpoints. We've got a long way. This is a campaign that we're going after, and right. And being good stewards of money in that way too. So it really was a good combination of my background, and then now I've really become a student at this entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and now I co-created and still teach a class at Miami University on entrepreneurial ecosystem building as a thing, as something you can be good at, something you can make a career out of, and I think we're in the 12th.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. I want to hear a little more about this. This
well, the students are getting jobs.
Curriculum.
The students are getting jobs, right? Like this is it's. And, here we are, we're going to have 3 interns this summer, and at least one of them is going to come from that class.
Really?
Because that's what this is, I'm telling you, it's happening. And just in little old South Carolina, I can rattle off a half dozen. Well, I mean, I will, of course, I can rattle off the start of Greenville ESOs, but there's the Harbor in Charleston. There's GrowCo in Columbia. There's the Gravity Center in Rock Hill. There's Emerge in Myrtle Beach. And I can't remember the Beaufort one, Beaufort Corridor or something. There's the Charleston Digital Tech Corridor. There are no shortage of these types of economic development entities that are geared towards high growth entrepreneurs and their teams. Now, I can demystify that word high growth for you as well, because it's not just lifestyle businesses, and it's not just the SBDC or SBA or the Women's Business Center that's under Community Works. Those are all important facets of the community, but that's a different type of, well, they're all connected to the community. But when we're talking about ecosystem building, it's a matter of where do you fit in that melange, in that menu? How do you help contribute? And are you measuring your effectiveness? Or is this just something that you're a service provider and it sure looks like you run an accelerator, but that's really just to get you clients, at the end of the day?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being a thing. So so you talk about all that in your class.
Yeah.
And so when a student comes into that class, I mean, what does day one of that class look like for them?
So let me rewind it to the literal day one of the class even before then. So the Kauffman Foundation is an organization in Kansas City that is $1 billion endowment, like literally Scrooge McDuck money that this group has to foster entrepreneurship, not just in Kansas City, but throughout the country. And this was probably 2018, and I was at a conference called eShip Conference, and it was 300 of my peers that were in other cities, states, large, small, Techstars, Generator, all the big ones and the small ones. And the guy on stage, his name was Andy Stoll, was sharing some of these facts that new business creation in the United States was at a 40-year low. And even now, after COVID, it bumped a little bit, but we're still not at the clip that we were in the 70s or 80s of people building and creating businesses. Yeah. So if you're the Kauffman Foundation, that's a troubling statistic for you, especially when they're giving money out at the clip that they were, that this is, death by 1,000 cuts here, $50,000, $10,000, and it's still not moving the needle. So Andy was on stage and said, what if we agreed that entrepreneurs need communities? Communities are really ecosystems. Ecosystems, because they're complicated, ecosystems need builders. So what if entrepreneurial ecosystem building were a thing? What if it was something you could study? What if it was something you could be good at? What if it was a major? Sports management is a major, right?
Yeah.
Urban planning is just civil engineering with a couple things slapped onto it. So why not entrepreneurial? He was just kind of challenging the crowd. And I was pretty fired up when sitting in the audience hearing this. And like the next break, I called my friends, Mark Lacker at the Miami University, and said, I want to teach a class on entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And they bit. It took a little time to get it into the curriculum. It started off as a couple weeks of a 1 credit hour class, and then it became a 1 credit hour class, and now it's a 3 credit hour class. Now there's 4 classes a year, so 2 each semester. So it's upwards of 30 students that are and now getting jobs at a lot of those places that I just mentioned. 43 North in Buffalo, Generator hires Miami grads, Cintrifuse and Cincy Tech in the Queen City. But day one of the class was about introducing this as a concept. So the normal construct of how a university looks at somebody who's studying entrepreneurship looks like one of two personas. One is usually it's like a locomotive. It's a train, that they're the ones that are the ones with energy and drive. And let's focus on the engine. Let's focus on the locomotive. But the second persona is the rest of the cars that are along the track. You need another human to believe in you. But what if, so when you get into an entrepreneurship program, you either want to learn how to be a better train, a better locomotive. Right. Because that's one thing that I believe is that I can't make you into an entrepreneur. I can't coach you to be taller, right? You either are, you aren't. But I can make you a better free throw shooter, and I can make you a better engine at the front. But I can't instill that if it's not part of something that's driving you. But what if you don't want to be the engine? What if you want to work for an engine? What if you want to have that entrepreneurial mindset that believes in agile thinking and flexible business plans and just kind of organic type of things like that?
You want to build something, you just don't know what.
Right. And for right now, I want to learn from somebody who's doing it. And that's, to me, the best thing about the Miami University mindset is, hey, you may not even ever be at the front of the train. And that's fine, because you need it along this line. On the corporate side, the corporate venture capital, or not corporate venture capital, corporate innovation. And it's all about that the whole train. But I contend that there is a third persona, and that is somebody who stands in front of the whole train and gets things off the tracks. Just makes sure that the conditions are right. And that's what an ecosystem builder does. Okay. Right? They're the ones that make sure that, can the train even get through here? What's the train look like? How fast is it moving? How slow is it moving? What do other people's trains look like? So the first class was about setting that example of, do you see yourself in one of these personas? And then I challenged the class to say, there is an ecosystem builder in every city that you're from, or every city that you have your mind on of where you're going to move. Because that's another thing that I firmly believe in, is that universities exist to get students jobs, right? That should be, and I know there's research and I know there's grants and it's a whole nother component about it. But when we're talking about entrepreneur support, it should be about manifesting this time that you spent, and hopefully you get a job when you graduate. So when I challenged everybody to think about that and say that there's an ecosystem builder, there's an entrepreneurial ecosystem in any city, there was some skepticism. I could hear some keyboards clacking, and then about 5 minutes later, from the back of the room, I hear this, huh? And then it'll go, yes, ma'am. And she said, you're right. And I said, where are you from? And it was Burlington, Vermont. And of course, that's where Ben and Jerry's and all this stuff. So despite the fact that you don't think it's happening, yeah, it is happening. And a lot of times these are very cut off because they're founder led, and they're just in this. They're the people that want to hang out with each other. And I look at Hack Greenville, and I look at some of the code things, and that those lend themselves to that tribalization of it, of that community building. But it's my job to kind of shine a spotlight on that and make sure that we're all aware of the intersection, the overlap. It's my version of what I call the Hippocratic Oath, my version of the Hippocratic Oath, right? First, do no harm. But to prove that I'm here for good. I'm trying to help. I don't want to control your funding. I don't want to be on your board, but I just want to know, is it working? And how's it going? And what are you guys up to? And does anybody talk to the folks after they graduate your program or go through your portfolio, or the people that is anybody making money? If so, yeah. How much? What's the range? You making revenue, net profit, whatever you want to call it? But are you making money? And if no, why not? How can we help?
So let's, we're coming up close to an hour here, and I want to shift a little bit so you can talk about the work that you're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's focus on that. Deep dive a little bit for me into the work that you're doing here in the Greenville area around Startup Greenville and some of the resources that are available for people now.
So we changed our name, modified our name at the beginning of the year to NextGEN. The GEN stands for Greenville Entrepreneur Network.
Okay.
And we felt that was an important evolution of Next as an organization. Next started as a chamber program. We're still under the Chamber's foundation, the Greenville Chambers Foundation. But it was about being very deliberate on this network that we're building, and this network that we're not building the network. I want to use my words carefully. It was already here, right? We're just connecting the dots and literally getting everybody to the same table under that banner of Startup Greenville. So when you think about NextGen, we do three things. And the first is to steward the broader entrepreneurial ecosystem, that which we've given the name Startup Greenville, hashtag Startup GVL. So the first order of business was to map out the ecosystem. And there were some, I believe it was a Furman University project that some students had put a spreadsheet together of the various outlets and agencies and groups. And it was a good list. It was a little noisy. It was a little bit too inclusive of some things that really weren't directly attributable to startup success. We pared that down, put it into a linear fashion. And now version 2 or maybe 3 is what we see right now on the website. But it all goes from imagining to, I believe the last one is growing and scaling. 60 some odd nodes around that ecosystem. It allows you to see where the overlaps are, where the gaps are. The smallest wedge in that pie is the early stage capital. So it's another, back to that canaries in the coal mine. Like, we can't be scratching our head and wondering, why aren't we having any unicorns, or why is access to capital? So, well, there's not enough here. We need to improve that. So that's the first thing we do, is steward the broader entrepreneurial ecosystem, because the second thing we do can't exist without that first one, which is provide direct support to high growth entrepreneurs and their teams through programs, services, and events. And that's really the manifestation of what NextGen does. So we've got a series of mentor programs. We started an accelerator last year, which is simply a 10 to 12 week curriculum, leveraging a lot of the expertise of the smart people here who have either built these businesses themselves, or a lot of them now are more frequently coming from other ecosystems, and we're very grateful that they're here. And then the third thing that we do is measure the impact. I want to be the Fitbit of the ecosystem, right? I want to take the pulse of and just like if you run or you cycle, you go to Strava, and Strava keeps track of all this sort of stuff, and it's all important. Right? It's all important. Your heart rate's important, as well as your pace is important, as well as how frequently, like, it's not just one thing, which gets back to that diversity. It's not just about venture-backed startups. That's important, right? That's important. But, and it's just as important to focus on that. Do we have some of these smaller businesses that can be that will be the lifeblood to the entire city, county, region, state?
Okay. So I'm gonna walk myself through this process. So say I'm building a system in my spare time over the last couple of years, which I have been. And it's a software as a service system. It's made kind of B2B platform in the email space. And so say that I contact NextGen.
Yep.
Say, hey, how can you help me at this point? And so I'm fully bootstrapped, got a prototype,
Good,
ready to run, and I need to get customers. I need to grow.
Yeah. And that's part of that. So yeah, let me just jump in. That's all part of it. Like, what questions are you asking yourself? Hopefully you have stepped on tripped some wires in the ecosystem before you got to that point and started to hear about, I hear there's a community here. I want to make sure that, and a lot of folks are reticent to just jump in with both feet and to sign up for an accelerator program, and that's normal too. But what we're trying to do is lower those barriers to entry to the community.
Okay.
So that, and I'm gonna pick on my friends at Furman University, but it's only because they've got a program. Greenville Starts is a great pre-accelerator program. About 25 people that go through there twice a year, so 50 people go through that. Well, it's an application base. It's a if you don't get accepted, maybe you apply again, hit some of these marks, but that's a program. We want you to be involved in the community, and then to find out, wow, I could benefit. Sounds like I could benefit from some mentorship. So let me apply for this mentor program. But that doesn't mean you're not involved in the community. That doesn't mean that I don't want you to keep trying and keep at it. So from a NextGEN standpoint, when you go to our website, I think it's Join Now is the button. First thing is get on our radar. And that's great. It again is zero barriers to entry. I think it's name, email, and then we'll start to, as we start to learn from each other, that you attend some of these events, you step on some of these other trigger points, whether it's through our mentors, whether it's through other founders that say, hey, you got to hear what Barry's up to. I think he would benefit from this. Why don't you have coffee with him? Or why don't you see, I'll bring him to the next Founders Forum, which is the monthly series of events that we do.
Okay.
But I want to draw a stark distinction of this isn't just a magic entrepreneurial pill that I will sell you for $19.95 and you take 3 a day and then whammo, I've made you into the. It's you got to kiss a lot of frogs, along the way. You gotta test some of this stuff out, and sometimes it's not what people want to hear. They look at chart span. You mentioned a couple of the Iron Yard, but you didn't mention chart span. And they look at chart span and Kiatech and Scope Stack and some of these that are kind of on the Hall of Fame of these Greenville startups.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen the first at bat. It swung and missed a lot and fouled off some. And what we're hearing now, or at least what the legend is, man, Kiatech got a Series C and they're one of 15 companies in South Carolina to be at that Series C and everything must be great. And it is great. I'm just poking fun, but that's a matter of saying, well, let's look at what Matt Gavart did 7 years ago. What was he doing? How was he hanging around and asking the right questions? And did we as an ecosystem facilitate that? Or do we as an ecosystem have too many things that cost a ticket? That you have to sign up for this 3 series course, and then once the graduation is over, that's the end of the communication. So we're building that community and really making sure that SCRA and Venture South and Greenville Starts and Platform at Greer and Village Launch and SBDC, all of those acronyms feel like their members are doing this together. And so once a month, I get that group together around that map. We meet right here at the Next Innovation Center, and it's about, I don't know, last time we had about 20 some people from 18 different organizations that literally sit around the same table. And in the first 4 minutes, everybody gives an update of what they do last month, where they get stuck, what went really well, where they could use help. But it keeps everybody communicated, like the communication and the energy is high. And then there's also hopefully some collaboration and realizing that you can go through a couple programs. You can actually, this is a benefit. So that's a long answer, but my first thing would be when we do get those inquiries is great. We hope to see you at the next Founders Forum, which is our monthly regular, it doesn't cost anything to show up and meet some people and talk to some folks. Because
when's the next one?
The next one, it's a good question. What is this, April? Let me just pull it up, because our last one was just last Wednesday. And I don't know when this is going to air. So just go to NextGEN GVL, nextgengvl.org. There's an events page.
Okay.
But let me pull that up real quick. April 16th.
April 16th. All right. Good to know.
And that is in partnership with Village Launch. So it's another thing that it's not just us doing this.
All right. Well, I will see if I can potentially get this thing published for you ahead of that, just to maybe give it a little more attention if possible. So the last thing that I want to leave you with, there's two things. You mentioned potentially having some stories from that Disney cruise time. Anything you'd like to share there?
I think the best one so my job was not cruise operations, right? So I'm not going to tell you any stories about people that, passed out in their chaise lounge or went down the water slide, in some compromising scenario. But, some of the fun things that I got to do was to, we put these, I think it's called a D scale model of the ship into our partner resorts, because there was that land and sea component, 4 days and land 3 on the sea, or vice versa. Well, if you're working with a cabinet manufacturer, you can't just put an IKEA, black lacquer cabinet in the Grand Floridian. It has to be themed like a Victorian, like that. So I got to work with Imagineers on Contemporary Resort, Grand Floridian, Boardwalk, Yacht and Beach. Forget the other ones.
Oh, wow.
But to work through that project as a young kid, again, it felt like my grad school. Like this was really learning how to do things the right way, and for a while they had those. At least the Contemporary one didn't go down for a while, and I was able to bring my kids there eventually and point to that and said, your dad did that.
Nice. That's pretty cool. All right. So the last thing that I really did want to leave you with, to kind of take us home here, I want to ask you one question. Why should a town focus on startups?
Because it's going to be this is not a political thing, but it's going to be the future of America, is focusing on these small businesses. I believe the stat is the low 90s, maybe 95% of most of America works for a small business. And that's with 500 people or less. I think that's even an aggressive number. I think more people work for 20-person companies.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're not focusing on that, it's going to be handled by. It's either going to be the market is going to figure it out, or they're going to go to a community that does emphasize that. So, back to what I said earlier about Super Bowl squares, and not saying, put 50% of your squares over here, put 100%, but we have to have one of those chips covered. One of those squares needs to be covered about fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, because it does startups create new jobs. So all net new jobs come from startups. Back in the Cincinnati days, if P&G was laying off people, Kroger was hiring people, P&G, there was just a swap, and there was a lot of churn. But if Barry and I create the Barry and Eric show, and we hire 2 people, and those are net new jobs. We just created 2 new jobs. They didn't exist before. We didn't shrink a department and start a department. We created new jobs. The second thing is it brings in outside investment. That there's more happening here that people from the outside are interested in, that it's not just some exclusive country club thing and I can't even dip my toe in. There's interest from the outside. And then the third thing, it makes a diverse and interesting community when you have more voices in the choir than just one or two industries or one or two big businesses. And that's really the diversity that you see in the Research Triangle Park of the RTP, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. There's just Austin is another one of, it's not just the tech companies. There are some, there's a food scene. There's some cool bars. There's stuff to do outside. It sounds an awful lot like Greenville, right?
Yeah.
Like there's more to do than just go clock in at ABC generic Big Co and clock out and slide down the Fred Flintstone dinosaur and hop into your car and go home. There's more stuff to do. So startups add that diversity to the whole ecosystem.
Fantastic. All right. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I appreciate you having me on, and I also appreciate you being part of the ecosystem, you yourself.
Thank you.
And also the stuff that you're doing at reinvigorating the code conference, and really, Pam came to the Founders Forum on Wednesday, and we talked about bringing Hack Greenville and Startup Greenville together, blurring those lines, and there is a lot of overlay. There's a lot of interplay between those two. The creative group, the creative community, we've got to get engaged and involved too, and that's going to make for stronger bonds. And I just really appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit of the story.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. It's a really interesting story, really interesting path to get here for sure. And so I've got to give my weekly shout out, thanks to another local company here, Herd Media, who helped us get this podcast off the ground in the first place. So if you're looking to start a podcast, or you need some help with editing, or just some guidance, or you want to delegate the entire process to them and you can just focus on the interviews, contact the good folks over at Herd Media. With that, this has been the Carolina Codecast.